MariaDB Serverfest was a virtual conference spread out over 3 days in September 2020, taking place first in Paris, then in New York, and last in Singapore and Beijing. The Serverfest was a first in many ways for MariaDB Foundation. The first time we addressed the users of MariaDB Server, not the developers of MariaDB Server. It was the first time we went virtual. So far, we've always had our unconferences face-to-face. And it was the first time we did a conference with call for papers and an approval process. Earlier, we had what we called unconferences with a very spontaneous agenda. It was a success. The numbers speak for themselves. We had over 10,000 unique video views on YouTube alone and over 2,000 simultaneous viewers on Bilibili.com. 35 talks by 30 presenters, 12 live streams, each with 6 hours of talks. Over 500 registered attendees, and registration wasn't even mandatory. And over 1,000 chat messages during the conference. All talks are now available as recordings on YouTube and Bilibili. So we planned for the known advantages of virtual conferences. So of course, virtual conferences don't transfer human diseases, but there are other known advantages. No time lost traveling, no jet lag, no flight cost nor hotel cost, a smaller carbon footprint, a possibility to invite speakers that don't want to travel. But that wasn't enough for us. We wanted to mitigate the concern that so many people have for these virtual conferences, and that's the lack of interactivity. Interactivity is the prime reason for conference attendees to bear the time and monetary cost of physical travel. So we asked ourselves, can we improve this interactivity? The trigger for how we made our innovations here was a distant keynote. It turned out that just improving interactivity piecemeal was not the right starting point for the reasoning, although interactivity was the end goal. What ignited the changes was the experience of staring into a soulless camera when delivering a keynote. The audience was so abstract. The whole situation is so artificial. There's no laughter, no applause, no booing or rotten tomatoes, no interactive tension in the air. And for that, we're supposed to line up all our presenters at a conference at a potentially awkward time of day for them and for the audience around the world. So then the recording of presentation seemed to be the trigger that changed it all. It seems now like a no-brainer to ask for recorded presentations, but and it has been starting to be a success for other conferences as well. But when we decided to go with these recordings, we did so on our own. And benefit of inventing the wheel ourselves is that we got the opportunity to invent quite a number of the aspects of the surrounding car around the wheel as well. So if the presentation is recorded anyway, we might as well broadcast it several times, we thought. Hence, we divided the planet into 3 time zones: Paris for Europe, Middle East and Africa, New York for the Americas, and Beijing and Singapore for Asia. We broadcast the presentations at times convenient for those times, using the city names as a symbol, and in particular a symbol for the time zone. So as the presentations are recorded, the presenters are free. They're freed up to interact with the audience throughout the presentation. This is why we set up Zulip chat topics, one for each presentation. We got over 1,000 chats still available now for everybody to read and even to come up with follow-up comments on. Subtitles was another very important thing. As we had the recordings and as YouTube guesses subtitles automatically, decided to clean up the suggested subtitles, and we got many positive comments about these. Evidently, subtitles simplify understanding. Our speakers and our audiences come with many different both native and non-native accents. Written text helps. So now the recordings remain available. We may be making a virtue now out of necessity, but it's still important to note that the recordings of the talks remain available. We've chopped up our live stream into individual talks and on YouTube and Bilibili, and these talks are accessible from the same URLs where the talk was first presented with its abstract. For instance, the keynote by Supermetrics about how they chased the perfect database is available on mariadb.org/fest2020 perfectdb. That page also has the link to the live interactive Q&A session after the talk, and the PDF and the Zulip chat. Well, bear with us, not all 35 talks has every sub-aspect of the talk, but we're almost there. So, you heard about the interesting presentations at the MariaDB Serverfest, but you didn't yet have time to watch them when we were live. Or you have so far seen only a couple of them and would like some hints as to which other presentations might be worthy of taking a look at. Well, that's the purpose of this video, to help you pick and choose, suggesting what could be interesting for you. All the Serverfest presentations are available on YouTube with subtitles and Q&A sessions. So, a couple of tips. The first tip, look at the short, roughly 5-minute Q&A sessions first, if you're unsure of whether to invest time in the whole 25-minute presentation. And second, approach the talks by category. That's mariadb.org/fest2020 sessions. And use the schedule URL only as a navigational help in the case that you remember that was the second session on Tuesday if you were an attendee to the live sessions. A third tip, check out the overall experiences from the MariaDB Server Fest at the blog entry Fest Conclusions. And a fourth tip, take a look at the Zulip chat protocol from each of the talks, the recap of what people were saying. The individual chats are linked from each talk page, which is what I'm mentioning in my overview, which I will now start with. So the first category of presentations were user stories. How do users use MariaDB Server? What are their experiences and thoughts? The first presentation in this category was by Supermetrics, perhaps the hottest tech startup in Finland currently. They are all about analyzing metrics on web-related marketing activities, which of course generates quite a lot of data. So what do they think about data persistence? How do they choose a database? When do they pick NoSQL, when key value, when relational? And why do they prefer a cloud variety of MariaDB Server in the form of SkySQL? Clearly, don't miss Dulipa Vijayawardana's and Victor Dubshebaka's Supermetrics and the Many Bears, a modern-day fable on the search for the perfect database. Another great user story is Sasha Vanyachin's building a relational data lake with MariaDB column store. We didn't have a feature-level intro to Column Store, the flagship feature in MariaDB Server 10.5, but what can be better than a user story? Then the other category, second category, are migration talks. Migration is a common denominator throughout the fest. In the yellow use case category. We had color coding on the web. Do take a look at Li Shunpeng's user story on migrating from Oracle to MariaDB. Li Shun is a MariaDB veteran and works for both MariaDB Foundation and WuQtech in China. A top migration presentation is also Sveta Smirnova's How to Migrate from MySQL to MariaDB Without Tears. Also in the same category, we have Shiv Iyer's Migration Tales, mainly about the financial industry. Then cloud usage is another common denominator for the FEST talks, quite like migration is. So where Supermetrics explained why they are interested in Sky SQL, Robert Hedgepeth of the MariaDB Corporation gives you an intro to MariaDB Sky SQL, next generation DB as a service from the source. In the cloud category, you'll also find Tera Zhu's intro, How to Help Financial Customers Use Tencent Cloud MariaDB, and Microsoft partner Ram Sajja's presentation on IT operations on Azure MariaDB. So we wanted to shed light on MariaDB server functionality from a multitude of directions. MariaDB Foundation board member Sergey Golubchik gave an overview of 10.5 and beyond. On all MariaDB unconferences, people flock around Marko Mäkelä, who he presented the scalability improvements in MariaDB's InnoDB storage engine. Peter Zaitsev of Percona did a comparison of MySQL 8 versus MariaDB 10.5. Sveta Smirnova provided another overview of the improvements in the latest MariaDB versions. Seppo Jaakola described both old and new functionality, first in his overall MariaDB Galera cluster presentation, then in Galera clustering in MariaDB 10.5 and beyond. Federico Razzoli gave a great overview of temporal tables, explaining the difference between system-level tables for auditing and application-level tables for added logic functionality. Richard Bensley came with a great and funny war stories on various MariaDB functionality. Check it out in SQL mode equals ludicrous. Robert Binder described the newest possible of all functionalities with MariaDB, just freshly released on GitHub, bringing MariaDB closer to the data science community, the MariaDB Jupyter kernel. Some of the deepest technical presentations were highly valuable, more distilled versions of presentations having happened earlier. One of the coolest presentations on all of the fest was Valery Kravchuk's dynamic tracing of MariaDB server on Linux, problems and solutions. Highly technical, quite demanding, but even more rewarding. Valery's MariaDB 10.5 new features for troubleshooting is something I also very much recommend. Sergey Petrunia is known for his optimizer deep dives. He had two presentations at the MariaDB Serverfest, Analyze for Statements, MariaDB's Hidden Gem, and Optimizer Trace walkthrough. Check them out. So then, storage engines. MariaDB Server is open and underlines its core value of openness by cultivating the storage engine architecture. The Connect storage engine was mentioned by two other talks, those by Jorge Torres and Richard Hensley. Then the complete overview was given in the third one by Federico Razzoli in Playing with the Connect storage engine. Vincenzo Ciorbaru spoke about long-term archival with MariaDB's S3 storage engine. That's the first time a deep presentation on S3 was given by somebody else, somebody other than the S3 core author, Mikael Monti-Widenius. The S3 engine was compared to by Seth Shelnut in MyTile, a cloud-native storage engine based on TileDB, one of the talks that got the most interactions on Zulip. Although the implementation is not exactly a storage engine, I'll conclude this group with Jorge Torres' talk on AutoML in MariaDB, train and query machine learning models straight from MariaDB. A great presentation on the deep integration between a machine learning module and MariaDB. Take a look. So you get even more out of a MariaDB server if it's properly integrated into hardware. Dong Zhang spoke about SSD integration in MariaDB meets solid-state computational storage drives, higher performance at lower cost. Krunal Bauskar spoke about MariaDB on ARM, also one of the talks providing most engagement on Zulip. And Li-Xin Long spoke about CDB and SinusDB with hardware and software integrated design. So speaking of China, there's some hot stuff. Sichuan serves spicy food, if you allow the analogy. And a few Chinese presenters served quite hot and technically deep stuff in the Beijing sessions. So while all sessions were in English all across the planet, some were not broadcast in Paris or New York. Luckily, they are recorded for you to catch up on now. Harvesting the Chinese gold nuggets should be facilitated by our decision to subtitle every single video, whether Chinese or not. Some of the hot Chinese talks I've already mentioned under other headers, such as Li-Xin's presentation under migration, Tencent's presentation under cloud, or the SinusDB integration under hardware. Two presenters were from WatcherTech, think database as a service here. Pengfei Ma spoke about MariaDB database clusters on Kubernetes, and spoke about avoiding replication delays. Quite an interesting use case talk was by Yang Chen of MariaDB at Bilibili.com, the company who live streamed our videos in China and now hosts the individual presentation videos for the Chinese audience. So to conclude the list of talks, I picked one of my favorite topics, community. This is about how MariaDB server works with the community and how MariaDB Foundation works with the community. The first talk in this category is Alexander Sanya-Bielkin's How to Get Your Bug Fixed Fast. It's a very self-descriptive header. How should a bug be described so that it's easy to fix for the developer? You can see the years of experience and some frustration that have flown into this presentation, so do take a look at it. Daniel Black, recently joining MariaDB Foundation from IBM, gave an overview of how MariaDB Foundation thinks about innovation in It's All About You, innovation that matters. Eric Herman, chairman of the MariaDB Foundation, presented Comparing Ecosystems, MariaDB and Public Code, based on his deep experience from both ecosystems. And last but not least, there's the Ask Me Anything session with MariaDB founder Mikael Monti-Widenius in AMA with Monty. I had the joy of conveying the many audience questions to Monty on all topics, business and technology, personal and public, past and future. So I sincerely hope this overview will help you benefit from last month's MariaDB Serverfest 2020 for a long time to come. Thank you.